Now he backs down Federico in the post from the far block, spins inside, gets free, and puts it in for two. Lampkin picking up where he left off in the second half of yesterday's game, and the Orange are tied at 9, 5 minutes into the first half.
The Orange and Red Raiders were level through the first 10 minutes, but Darian Williams broke the deadlock through the contact.
Williams likes his matchup against Majstorovic, posting him up from the near block. He fades away for two, puts it in, plus the foul. Welcome to college basketball. Peter Majstorovic. Williams takes him to school. Texas Tech back in front, 18-16, halfway through the first half.
And it was at that point that Texas Tech started to find its stride, leading by 7. But just like a night ago, the Q's doesn't quit.
Freeman from front court left, passes towards the timeline for Starling, who slashes right to left and goes right down Broadway for the score. J.J. Starling almost impressed with himself at how quick he accelerated to the cup. Timeout for Grant McCaslin and the Red Raiders. They still lead by 5 with 4 minutes to go in the first half.
After a stop on the defensive end, J.J. Starling went right back to work.
From straight away, gives it up Starling, who bursts by Hawkins, and his righty shot is up and in. What a start for J.J. Starling up to 11, 5 of 6 from the floor. And Syracuse within 3, with under 3 to go first half.
Those pair of Starling buckets were part of a 9-2 SU run to send things into the break tied. The Red Raiders then opened the scoring in the second half, but Donnie Freeman, he had a quick response.
Dribbles with his left, stops, shoots a long 2, misses, but a putback and 1. Donnie Freeman, the freshman phenom, with an and 1 putback and a chance to tie this game right back up.
Texas Tech guard, Chance McMillian shoots the 3 ball at a 50% clip, and the Flamethrowers' breakthrough in Brooklyn was inevitable.
Hawkins brings it in for Texas Tech, moves left to right, kicks off, top of the arc, three-pointer, sinks it. Chance McMillian breaks the stalemate, 41-38, Texas Tech over Syracuse, 4 minutes into the second half.
Now, Syracuse wouldn't go away just yet. The Orange trailed by just 4, but a Red Raiders 7-0 run was capped off by Darian Williams attacking the cup.
Williams down the right alley, puts up a layup and gets it to go. 5 straight points for Williams. That's a Red Autry timeout. 11-point lead for Texas Tech. 55-44. The Red Raiders lead the Orange just under 11 minutes to go.
The Orange with their backs against the wall? Well, that's nothing new. J.J. Starling had been held scoreless to this point in the second half, and with SU needing a spark, the guard decided it was time to snap that stretch.
J.J. Starling walks the ball up right to left, dribbles with his left, drives, two-handed dunk. Had the lane wide open, said, why not? I'll take it myself. Flushes it up to 17 points for Starling, and a 7-point deficit for the Orange yet again.
The Orange continued to battle, but the Red Raiders said, hey, we want to leave Brooklyn with a win.
Williams standing at midcourt for the Red Raiders. 10 seconds left on the shot clock, backing down Bell, far side. With his left, spin move, layup, falls. Up to a 7-point lead for Texas Tech, just over 60 seconds to go.
All Tech needed to do to seal a victory was knock down some free throws. An 85% showing from the stripe sent the Red Raiders back to Lubbock with the victory.
Back-to-back close games, but back-to-back losses here at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York. A home crowd, but 2 L's. Downstate 79-74. Texas Tech polishes off Syracuse in the Legends Classic. The Orange, in back-to-back nights, pick up back-to-back losses and drops to 3-2 on this young season.
And so there you have it. In just about a 24-hour span, Syracuse goes from 3-0 to 3-2 as the one team that comes out of the Legends Classic without a victory. Texas Tech defeats Syracuse 79-74. The Orange will, of course, return home for a Wednesday night battle with Cornell right before Thanksgiving, a chance to get back on track in the Dome. All right, we're almost wrapped up here on Orange Overtime. Again, I'm your host, Sam Reese, but before we put a wrap on things, it's time. Pepsi Player of the Game. I know you guys have been waiting for this moment. And listen, there's some candidates here on the table, but I've got to go, of course, to the winning team in Texas Tech. They're the ones who got the job done, and I'm selecting Darian Williams as my Pepsi Player of the Game. He really picked it up in that second half, finished the night 9 for 14 from the field. He even knocked down a triple, which isn't necessarily a prowess of his. 6 rebounds in his 24 minutes of action, too. So Darian Williams, you are the Pepsi Player of the Game tonight as the Red Raiders eke out the victory over the Orange by 5, and that puts a wrap on the Legends Classic for Syracuse down in Brooklyn. While it might put a wrap on the Legends Classic, that doesn't put a wrap on our coverage, because coming up next, we've got the double overtime here on WAER with Luke Burgess and AJ Myers. You can call into the show at 315-443-2011. You can also text into the show at 315-556-3929. They'll be on the airwaves up until 11 o'clock Eastern Time, so plenty of opportunities to call and break that one down. And before I sign off here, a reminder that it's crossover season, our favorite time of the year. So 2 basketball broadcasts in 2 days, but we got another broadcast tomorrow in about 14 hours time. So we'll be on the air again here on WAER for our 3rd broadcast in as many days for Syracuse football. They're at home hosting the UConn Huskies in a rare late season non-conference matchup. Countdown to kickoff gets underway at 11:30 a.m. and the action gets started from the Dome at noon. We hope you join then. And I mentioned it earlier, but our next basketball broadcast will be the night before Thanksgiving. So if you're home with family, make sure to tune in to WAER Wednesday night when Syracuse hosts Cornell for a Central New York non-conference battle. Countdown to tip-off for that one is at 6:30. The game gets underway at 7 o'clock. It's a fun time of year, ladies and gentlemen, with football and basketball in full force. And before I say goodbye, a huge thank you to our producer, Max Gifford, our engineer, Hudson Ridley, Jake Klein on Radio Replay, as well as our entire WAER sports desk. None of this is possible without all of your hard work. It's a true team effort here on the original home of the Orange. But as mentioned, it's all from me, but we are getting set for the double overtime up until 11 o'clock with Luke Burgess and AJ Myers. So that's all from me as I sign off. But we've got Luke and AJ waiting in the wings. Guys, another game in which Syracuse was in it to the end, but no moral victories when all is said and done. A disappointing Legends Classic down in Brooklyn for the Orange.
Sam, Empire Classic over. Syracuse winless. And things wrapped up for SU men's basketball in this tournament.
Yeah, I was really excited the way this game started against Texas Tech. J.J. Starling was rocking these long sleeves. He was playing a lot of swagger. And it just didn't come to fruition in the second half. A tale of 2 halves, and really that was the story of this little mini tournament that the Orange just played.
Syracuse loses it 79-74, gives up a bunch of points in the second half. The free throws were a huge issue yesterday. Today they seemed better, but SU couldn't play defense in the second half. A disappointing performance down the stretch. Not what you want to see. Donnie Freeman looking a little bit lost around the court. Not like he is ready to play in these big-time Division I matchups with a Quad 1 win on the line. 5-star recruit, first-round NBA draft pick. He didn't look ready today. This game was tied at half, and Syracuse doesn't get it done. We're going to break it all down coming up on the double overtime. You can call in 315-443-2011. It starts right now.
The game may be over, but our coverage on WAER is not. Here on the double overtime, we'll be breaking down all the highs.
Copeland, left wing 3! It's good! Vladimir Copeland wins the game for Syracuse! For the first time in 1,856 days, Syracuse beats an AP Top 10 team.
Darling drives to his right, puts up a layup. No, but Copeland with the putback slam. Oh my goodness, Quadir Copeland makes a statement.
And the lows.
Syracuse walked into John Paul Jones Arena looking to make a statement, and Virginia said, oh no you don't. Cavaliers 84, Orange 62, your final.
Well, Syracuse heads into North Carolina and faces its worst loss in its history in the Atlantic Coast Conference.
Heartbreaking. The Orange bow out in the second round of the ACC tournament for the second year in a row.
Delivering our hottest takes along the way.
The expectations should be higher after a few years when Adrian Autry sets that bar, but the bar is still low.
5-star, Donnie Freeman. Yep. I mean, this guy has the tools. I think he could be the truth.
I think Lampkin and the combination of him and Carlos will rejuvenize this team and make them an actual complete basketball team.
Get your voice heard by calling in at 315-443-2011 or check out our YouTube at WAER Sports Talk. It's the double overtime, and it starts right now.
Syracuse loses 79-74 against Texas Tech and falls to 0-2 in the Legends Classic at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. And a disappointing performance, a second half where things collapsed. Tied at 31 at the half. The Orange can't hold on in the second half.
Yeah.
Luke Burgess, AJ Myers here with you. 315-443-2011. Call us in. Let us know your thoughts on this tragic loss for the Orange, really. A game that some people were saying was a must-win game coming in, and the Orange can't get it done. We've actually got a caller in already. Quick reactions. We love you getting on the air early on here. We've got David from the car. He wants to talk about the positives from the last couple of days. Certainly, maybe we're not so excited about the positives. David, what do you think about some of the bright sides, I guess, of these last two games?
I want to say that they did not get blown out in the games. They kept them close. They were close losses. We were favored. Texas was favored by 10 or 12 points the other day. We kept it close. We had a chance to win. They still have a lot to work on. Free throws were better today. Free throws were better. That's got to continue. I mean, if it wasn't for our free throws yesterday, we make 5 more free throws, and we split. We would be 1-1 right now. But we did make our free throws, so we lost that game. We had a legitimate shot last night to win last night, but because of our free throw shooting, we lost. This team is starting to get better, but they need to hurry it up. They need to hurry it along. I mean, they have a week to get like Cornell. We'll see how well they do against Cornell. They need to start putting each first half of the last, second half of the last game and first half of this game. They need to put it together.
David, I agree. I think you make some good points, but how concerned are you that this team cannot play a full game? Because in both of these games, they didn't play well in the first half, and then tonight didn't play well in the second half.
Right now, I'm a little concerned, but I think they can get better, but they need to do it more quickly because we have Tennessee right after next. We're probably most likely we should be 4-2, and then we have Tennessee, and I want to see us play close. I don't want to see us get blown out of the gym. I want to see us play close. If not, maybe somehow we can win that game. So I want to see us in that game. I don't want to see us get blown out.
Right, David. My problem is you're looking at Texas Tech, right, and Texas. And give credit to Texas Tech. They were a highly ranked team analytics-wise coming into tonight. But those are two unranked squads. Tennessee is number 11 in the country right now in the AP poll and has a lot of really talented scorers. We're talking about another level. When Tennessee is really one of the elite teams in the country. So to not come away with a win this weekend, I know you said you wanted to talk about some of the positives. Sure, the free throw shooting is there, but right now it doesn't seem like this team can put together a complete game really to save its life. And down the stretch, I mean, you have a chance to pull away a win today. And I mean, you see Chris Bell miss a wide open 3 late in the game. That's stuff that I don't think is so easily correctable.
I think with Adrian Autry, I think he can do it. I see it. I see it coming into shape. I mean, I know it's hard. I'm trying to think positive. I really am. I'm trying to be optimistic. Any little thing that I can be. I'm trying to be optimistic.
All right, David, we appreciate your call. David's trying to be optimistic. I'm trying to be optimistic, AJ, but it's hard. Because, I mean, like I just mentioned, you talk about Chris Bell down the stretch there, right, in the second half. I mean, yeah, these games come down to margins. But Adrian Autry said it best yesterday in his press conference, right? He talked about, we've got to close out. There's no excuse. And it doesn't matter if we're close, if we're not winning these games. I mean, yesterday, it's an inbound to Chris Bell on the near wing that drifts into the stands, and Syracuse loses possession when they could have tied it up. And then today, you see a wide open three for the best three-point shooter on your team. And at this point, I almost want to put that in air quotes because Chris Bell only hits wide open threes, but this time he misses it. And Syracuse loses this game largely in part due to that. If you hit that three, it's a 2-point game.
Yes.
You
we
have
could be
a
in
chance.
overtime right now.
Yeah, we might not be on the air
Yeah.
yet. I agree.
Yeah, I think so. And I appreciate David's call, and I like his message with positivity. It may be a similar message that I echo later in the show, but David said, it looked great that we knocked down free throws. That's what we're talking about.
Exactly.
We're proud of this team.
And we're only talking about that because of what happened last
we're
night.
proud of this team because they were able to knock down their free throws. That seems like a new low for this team. If that's what you're praising from tonight's game is, hey, at least they hit some free throws, which to be fair, yes, if they hit free throws last night against Texas, they probably would have won that game.
Not probably. I mean, if you hit the free throws last night, then you beat Texas. I mean,
but
it's
still,
a close loss.
Free throws should not be something that it's like, oh, yes, this team can knock down free throws. Now we're a real team.
They're called free for a reason.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And yesterday it costs you. Today it's better, but the defense in the second half was just abysmal. I mean, you've shown flashes.
It was awful all game, the defense. There was never a point in this game.
31 points in the first half for Texas Tech is not bad.
But it was how they were getting those points. Wide open threes after wide open three. This team cannot close out a player from shooting a three-pointer. They just can't. They freeze. Or they leave players wide open in the corners. It was the same mistake hindering Syracuse all night long. This team can score. They have good offense. J.J. Starling looks good on the offensive end at times, but there's a real problem defensively.
The word that comes to mind when I watch the Syracuse defense is frustrating, right? That is the only thing that I can think of. If you agree, call in 315-443-2011. Shoot us a text, 315-556-3929. Let us know. You can also interact with us on social media. You can watch our stream on YouTube. Find us somewhere and let us know what you think about this Syracuse defense because it's shown flashes of being really good, AJ. I mean, Texas was ranked 19th in the country, and they held them to 29 points in the second half yesterday. You come out today, hold Texas Tech to 31, another team with some really good scores, but then just look pitiful in the second half. 48 points allowed. I mean, that's like an NBA half of basketball.
Quarter, maybe. But, yes, going back, I think you realize a bigger point, Luke. Tail two halves, both games. First game, a really slow start on both sides of the ball. They figured it out in the second half. This first half, this team looked really good. Offensively, they looked really good. The second half, the defense wasn't really there. I mean, you could maybe make an argument, sure, maybe the defense was there a little bit in the first half. I don't think so, but I understand what you're saying.
So you're saying that Texas Tech just wasn't hitting shots in the first half, and that's all it comes down to.
Yeah, I'm not. It wasn't an instance where I was like, that's some great Syracuse defense. I never saw that.
I'll be interested to hear what our talk reporter from Brooklyn, Andrew Selliver, has to say about that later on because he's going to listen in to what Adrian Autry has to say after this game. And I imagine it'll probably be a similar sentiment to what we heard last night, right?
Yeah.
About closing out, having to have that ability to finish these games and that there's no excuses. But at what point is that not enough? Because, I mean, you acknowledge the problem, but really nothing has gotten better. I will say, I'm encouraged by the defense's progression as a whole because when we're talking about going to double overtime against Youngstown State less than a week ago, and now we're talking about holding back-to-back teams who are, potentially ranked teams in the conversation, definitely in consideration for March Madness. I mean, we're talking about holding them to less than 80 points. So that's, certainly an improvement from what we saw at the beginning of the year. Overall, I still think the defense is a big issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about that second half, about good defense or good offense from Texas Tech or bad defense from Syracuse. I think it's easily bad defense.
Yes.
I mean, that's a conversation that we can have, but I don't think anyone's going to disagree with that, including Adrian Autry.
And it's all areas of the game. There's points where players are just dribbling up and top of the key shooting a wide open three, or there's issues rebounding the ball. This team can't rebound the ball that well at times. They're missing easy boards on the glass, and I think the defense is the problem, but you could put that as problem one or problem two. Bigger problem, maybe, because this is the first legitimate opponents. We're not going to count those first three games as legit opponents. You just played two legit opponents, and you couldn't play a full game of basketball, and it cost you. You could say, against Texas, it cost you maybe more on the free throw lines. I think tonight it cost Syracuse that they couldn't play two halves. First half, they looked pretty good, especially offensively. The second half.
Well, they came out flying.
They did. All right, can I get to my J.J. Starling little spiel here? This guy comes out. He's rocking long sleeves, which I love. Little swagger. They look nice. I do kind of want to know what went into that decision, but that's not really that important. But he looked great in the first half. He was aggressive to the cup. There were points where he was going to the corner, getting the ball, no hesitation, shooting it right away, knocking down threes. That's something we did not see from J.J. Starling last year. We're seeing it now in that first half. Second half, and it's something I want to hear from Andrew, I don't know, he had the ball. He just wasn't aggressive. I don't know where that aggression, it left him in the second half.
And he has been so aggressive this year, and that's what I've really liked about his game because, through the first maybe 2.5 games before that second half, and overtime, of course, against Youngstown State, I think the conversation around this team was who is the offensive alpha. There's a lot of guys who have the ability to score. J.J. Starling in the last 3 games has obviously established himself as the main guy on this offense. In my mind, there's no debate about that. Eddie Lampkin's a distributor, but he was 2 for 6 tonight and had 4 points. J.J. Starling has 27 more after he had, I believe, 19 last night. I can check that. And then going back to that Youngstown State game where he had 38.
And in the first half, Starling had 14 points, 6 of 8 from the field, 2 of 4 from beyond the arc. No free throws. Second half, 7 points from the line of his 13 points, 3 of 7 from the field, just attempted 1 3. He did not have the same impact in the second half as he did in the first. And for me, you want to look at the defense, sure, but I think that's why they lost this game. Because, I know you're on this side, and I'm kind of, in the middle of the Chris Bell argument here. They couldn't rely on Chris Bell in the second half to win them the game.
They haven't been able to rely on Chris Bell all year.
They needed to rely on J.J. Starling to win them the game, and unfortunately the ball just didn't get in his hands, and he wasn't aggressive enough.
Well, that's what they need to do every single night. J.J. Starling is the offensive alpha, but is that going to be enough for Syracuse to win big games and close games out down the stretch? Call in 315-443-2011 or shoot us a text if you're busy. If you're like David and you're in the car, don't text us, 315-556-3929. You just talk to us about what you feel about this Syracuse offense because at times it's so frustrating to watch. And you don't even have to be an SU fan. I'm sure most of our listeners tuning in tonight we're pulling for the orange, but you could be listening anywhere in the country on WAER.org. But Syracuse is a frustrating team to watch because they have so much obvious potential on the offense. But, tonight, like you talk about, Chris Bell, his basketball through the opening games of the season has been unacceptable. And, I don't want to say that lightly. I don't want to take away the fact that Chris Bell had 22 points tonight, but 11 of them came at the line. Yeah. And, outside of the three-point shooting, AJ, it reminds me of a Judah Mintz performance where we're talking about, Judah had 23 points, but 13 of them came at the line, and a lot of them were soft fouls. The referees were blowing the whistle left and right tonight, and, credit to Chris Bell for going 11 for 11 from the line when he was pretty bad yesterday, and that's one of the main reasons why SU lost the game. So I appreciate the fact that Bell, did his job, got to the line, fixed what needed to be fixed. But he was 3 of 8 from 3. And the 3 3-pointers that he hit in this game, all of them were wide open.
Yes, and Adrian Autry just said this in his post-game press conference about Chris Bell. Sometimes he's not ready to shoot. He pump fakes a couple of times. Is that a confidence thing? Maybe. It shouldn't be when you are you should be the reliable shooter on this.
He is the sharpshooter on the team, right?
You shouldn't have to worry about the
role
pump
because
fakes.
he doesn't really. There was a point. AJ, he took 9 shots tonight, and only one of them was a 2.
Yeah.
And it was a long 2.
That's his game. He's a 3-point shooter.
Right, but if you can't do that in clutch situations, then, okay, so one of the conversations that we had a lot at the beginning of the year was about Chris Bell driving the basket more. Being more aggressive.
No.
That was something we talked about. I didn't feel that was his game. I think Chris can be productive against worse teams, but in the ACC, Chris Bell is not going to be able to drive the basket consistently and actually have any impact offensively. But tonight, some of the 3-pointers that he took, there's one specifically, I was in the second half. He had the ball on the left wing, and he had a wide open shot, and instead he sidestepped to the left and then took the 3. And all it did was allow the Texas Tech defender to close down on him more. And it's a contested shot. And, he just hasn't hit contested shots this year.
Yeah.
Simply. And a lot of them don't even look, a lot of them are ugly. They're ugly shots. That one in particular missed badly. His 3 from the corner missed badly. I don't want to stretch too much because, like I said, I know he puts up 22 tonight, but like Coach Autry said yesterday, every game is different. It's situational basketball. And I think you can make the argument that Chris Bell single-handedly lost Syracuse both of these games. I really do.
I think you're putting a lot of stress on one player.
But he's a three-point shooter, right?
True.
And
yes.
he had the chance to make this a game tonight.
He did.
And he missed the shot. Wide open, the easiest shot on the court. A corner three. It's the shortest possible three. And last night, he goes a terrible night from the line. And Syracuse loses by 4 points in a night that it went 50% from the charity strike.
So you're completely writing Chris Bell off here a little bit.
I'm not writing him off. I think he can be incredibly productive.
Yeah, okay,
he's just not.
Now
right
you're building to my point. Let's go back to last season. I know this was last season, but the end of last season, Chris Bell had a 30-point game, 26-point game, 23-point game. In those games, he was hitting 8, 6 three-pointers a night. He has the ability to flip the switch and get the hot hand. It's still early in the season. This is kind of my overarching message. Calm on Chris Bell, because it's still early in the season. He can flip this around. Yeah, he hasn't started well. Yeah, maybe he's costing this team games right now, but he's a three-point shooter. It's kind of like a batter in baseball. Sometimes they have an off two or 3 weeks where they can't hit.
What is
right
the
now?
standard?
Chris Bell cannot shoot.
What is the
consistently.
standard for this program, though? Because we're talking. I mean,
well,
I
that's
understand
a much larger
Syracuse
question.
Has fallen from the point where it's an NCAA tournament expected team every single year. And, I mean, we're talking about, Chris
we're talking
Bell,
about free throws.
The main three-point shooter on this team. Well, Chris Bell, he's not going early in the season. I mean, and I understand Syracuse was picked to finish 11th in the ACC this year.
Yeah.
But we're talking about this team like a team that is predicted to finish at 11th in the ACC. I mean, these games were right there.
They were.
And,
Absolutely.
I mean, Syracuse is a big enough basketball brand that it should have a player who can knock down threes in clutch situations like that. And like I said, I really don't want to be too harsh on Chris Bell because I completely understand that there were a lot of shots he did hit tonight. And he went to the line a lot. He drew fouls. That's a testament to his game. He's a good player, but he's not a clutch player. He is not a clutch player. I mean, think back to that NC State game. You talked about all the threes from last year.
Yep.
I think he had 27 points in that game, and all of them were in the first half.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are open looks that he's just getting good off-ball screens. And that's a credit to the offense. The offense, all the pieces are there. But Adrian Autry coached teams so far through 2 years don't have the ability to finish.
Yeah, and I understand your message. I understand your frustration. My thing is yes, these games were frustrating, and yes, they could have been 2 massive quad 1 victories for this team. And at the end of the year, you may look back and say, if you could have got one result against Texas Tech, it could be the difference between a bubble on the right side of the bubble and on the wrong side of the bubble. But it's still early. Chris Bell can turn things around. J.J. Starling can maybe turn things around where he gets more consistent. This team could maybe turn things around and be more consistent on the defensive end as well.
There's certainly potential there. We're going to talk more about that after the break. We are up against our first break here on the Double Overtime. We still got plenty more show to go. We're going all the way up until 11 o'clock. We'll step aside for a moment. When we come back, talking some offense. You're listening to Syracuse, or you're listening to the Double Overtime on WAER.
Hong Kong newspaper publisher Jimmy Lai went on trial this week for his role in anti-government protests 5 years ago. His son Sebastian Lai says his father has always stood up for freedom.
My father had a very good line, and he said, Hong Kong is so poor, the only thing they have is money.
That conversation Saturday on Weekend Edition from NPR News.
Saturday morning from 8 to 10 on WAER.
On last week's Wait, Wait, we asked Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer if she was the only sitting governor to have a rap song written about her.
That wouldn't surprise me. Have you met them? I'm going to get in trouble now.
On Peter Sagal, we'll try to get the stars of Somebody Somewhere, Bridget Everett and Jeff Hiller, to get themselves in hot water. That's on our intentionally provocative news quiz from NPR.
Saturday morning at 11 on 88.3 FM WAER.
Thanks for listening. Not a member yet? Make a first-time gift today and help empower WAER to provide trusted journalism, music discovery, and community conversation for all, no matter where you live or how you listen, from broadcast to podcast, on air and online. Members help power everything you find at WAER. Please give today at WAER.org to support this work. Selling a vehicle on your own, especially nowadays, can be a hassle, but donating it to WAER couldn't be easier. Simply provide a clean title and we'll take care of the pickup and donation receipt. To get started, visit WAER.org.
Start your Sunday mornings off right with Sunday Morning Gospel from 6 to 8 a.m. right here on WAER. Hosted by Cora Thomas, the program features some of the best local and national gospel artists. You'll hear everyone from Daryl Coley to the Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir to the Winans family. More information is available online at WAER.org. Join us Sunday mornings from 6 to 8 a.m. for Sunday Morning Gospel on 88.3 FM WAER.
Darian Williams passes off to Chance McMillian. Right wing, it's Kerwin Walton, the three-point specialist who loses his dribble. J.J. Starling pokes it free, and his righty lay in transition is clean. Off the glass.
Our good friend David in the car might be happy.
Yes.
Syracuse basketball is not.
Yeah, unfortunately not. Syracuse falls to Texas Tech 79-74 in the Legends Classic. The Orange couldn't get it done in either game in this little two-game mini streak. A.J. Myers alongside Luke Burgess. We're going to talk about more on that offense, and of course, the way to get involved is by calling in, or you can text in the call number 315-443-2011. You can text in 315-556-3929. Also on YouTube, you can watch us there. Twitter, check us out there as well. If you're going to call in or you're going to text in, the first thing I want is, out of all these players, oh yeah, I'm giving an assignment. Professor Myers here, I'm giving out an assignment. All these players for Syracuse, we're going to narrow it down to three, I think. Who is the guy on offense? Is it Chris Bell? Is it Eddie Lampkin? Is it J.J. Starling? Luke, I want to start with you first. Who's the guy on offense for Syracuse?
I already said it. J.J. Starling is the guy on offense. There is no debate about that. The Youngstown State game was his coming out party officially. I mean, I know we saw flashes of it last year, but really, I mean, it's actually kind of crazy when I think back to it, because J.J. Starling really never showed what he's shown in the last 3-4 games.
And you could say it's
at
because,
all last year.
Yeah, and you could say it's because one certain player is no longer here.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, Judah not being here makes a huge impact, right? Because he doesn't always have the ball. But when JJ has the ball, I mean, he is a great scorer. And in my mind, I mean, this is not really relevant to tonight's game, but in my mind is a better scorer than Judah when he has the ball. It maybe makes you wonder if he should have had the ball more last year in the offense. Maybe been running the point a little bit more rather than playing at the two. Because he has the ability to score without going to the line, which was, of course, something Judah was really known for. I mean, there's no question, though, to me, that it's JJ. I mean, 27 points tonight. I know a lot of them came from the foul line. Again, I believe he was 7 of 10. 7 of 10 from the line. So a pedestrian night. Really, maybe you would like one or two more of those to fall for a guard. And
You're not concerned how he disappeared kind of in the second half, though?
Well, I mean, he can't always be the guy.
Yeah.
You know who's not the guy right now is Donnie Freeman.
Oh.
I mean, listen.
Yes.
I understand that he had 13 boards tonight, and that's great.
Yeah.
But once again, it goes back to the conversation, if you were with us before we went to break, about the standard for this program, because this guy is the best recruit that Syracuse has had since Carmelo Anthony. And I mean, we're talking about a 1-for-7 shooting night tonight in a game where they needed him. And he played 29 minutes. I mean, the conversation has been that he hasn't played enough. Well, he played a lot tonight.
Yeah,
and he played 30 out of 40 minutes.
There's no way you can make an argument to say Eddie Lampkin is showing signs of why he's, such a great recruit. He is struggling right now, and it's because he's a freshman. But that's
not an excuse. ESPN released an article today about the greatest one-and-dones in the last decade.
He's not that.
He is a one-and-done, according to every basketball scout in the country.
He's just a freshman. You cannot put all this pressure on just a freshman. He's only 5 games into his collegiate career.
Okay, yeah, I'm not saying that he can't get better. Well, I mean, if he doesn't get better, then he
that's
better reconsider 1-1. I mean, I don't want to be too harsh with Donnie. I know that he has potential. I think everyone with eyes knows that.
Yes, just look at him. He looks like Kevin Durant sometimes.
Yes. Physically, he looks exactly like him. And he plays like him a little bit, too. The only difference is that the shots don't fall.
Well, and the reason is he's taking shots from outside the paint. Drive to the cup, Eddie.
I
Johnny
don't
Freeman.
think he understands. I think maybe
because if he gets to the cup, he's unstoppable.
The aura of college basketball and kind of just the step up and the intimidation factor, I think, is maybe getting to him a little bit right now.
Maybe.
I think that he kind of came in, because he's talked about this after games, about, I'm still adjusting, I'm still kind of finding my footing, understanding what I can do well to be an effective college basketball player and fit into Coach Autry's system. And I love to hear that talk, right? I'm super pleased with. He seems like he's a great character guy.
Yes, composure-wise, he seems yes.
He understands the job. But I almost want to say that he's maybe discounting himself a little bit too much.
Yeah,
I think because he clearly is so physically dominant over so many of these guys. There was a matchup tonight we were talking about in the late second half where he got a mismatch. There was a switch on defense, and Donnie Freeman's 6'9", I believe 205. And, for a freshman, that is insane. And you think about some of the centers in college basketball who are under 200 pounds and are 6'11", 7 foot, and he's 6'9". He's got a great build. And he forces a baseline shot rather than driving the rim against the guy who's 6'5". And he can get there. And if he doesn't, he's going to get fouled because his arms are so long.
All Coach Autry needs to do is just sit him down and say, drive to the cup. Drive to the basket. You'll get easy baskets. We've kind of ruled out Donnie Freeman as the guy on offense here. Luke's definitely ruled out Chris Bell. He's going with J.J. Starling. We want to know what you guys think. Call in 315-443-2011, or you can text us 315-556-3929. A player we have not brought up, and I really want to bring up, Luke, because I want to get your opinion on it too. Eddie Lampkin. I still think he can be this team's number one offensive threat. I know he had an off day today. He only had 4 points, I believe.
Yeah,
and Coach Autry said this in the post-game press conference that he was catching the ball a little bit too far away from the basket. And I agree. I think he was out of position a little bit too much tonight. But I still think he can be a reliable number one scoring option for this team because he had 20 points against Youngstown State. Last night, he had a really efficient game. I think he was 6 of 8 from the field with 14 points. He can still be such an offensive threat because he's so aggressive in what Donnie Freeman needs to do in getting to the basket and scoring easy buckets, not having to rely on the Chris Bell threes or the J.J. Starling threes or magical layups.
Well, Eddie Lampkin is so talented.
Yes.
But his footwork is terrible. When Autry talks about him getting the ball too far away from the basket, it's because I legitimately think Adrian Autry does not believe that Eddie Lampkin can actually drive the paint because, first of all, he's not really good at dribbling. I don't know if you've noticed this through the first 5 games of the year, but, he mishandles the ball constantly.
But he's the kind of
he's
player...
so physically dominant that it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get to.
If you get him the ball close to the cup, then he can be a 20-point scorer.
Exactly, and that's what this team needs to do more of, I think, especially in the second half. They didn't get him the ball at all.
It comes back to what I'm saying about this offense being so frustrating because, this could happen. Donnie could drive more. Chris Bell just needs to shoot the ball and actually hit shots. And then, if JJ's just running the point, I think you have a tournament team. Because, a 5-point loss tonight and a 4-point loss last night to two teams that could easily be ranked right now in a different world?
This team gave us hope, I think, here in Brooklyn. They gave us hope that they can play well.
They gave me hope, but they didn't.
Did they kind of crush it as well?
No, they didn't give me any hope that they can make the tournament. And I know this is way too early to be talking about this. I understand that this conversation still has a long way to develop, but I don't see, the inability to close out games, number one. And number two, I just don't know that this is an offense that is ever going to fully mesh and reach its potential. It doesn't strike me that it will. Because, sure, the thing about getting Lampkin closer to the basket, that's something logistically that you can figure out.
Easily. And that's why Lampkin
is something game planning.
My guy for who's the best offensive player on this team, who
How
should
can you
be
say that
offensive
after
number
J.J.
one.
Starling has 38 points.
I think J.J. Starling can do that, but can he do that consistently?
He has. He's done it over the last 3 games.
He didn't do it enough in the second half for me to say that he can. He shied away, and I think Eddie Lampkin, he can't shy away. If you just get him the ball down low,
I just don't
he's going to bully
understand
in
how
and
you
score.
could possibly say it. Let me read you the second half numbers from tonight. 13 points. 7 of them come from the foul line. He's 3 of 7 from the field. Eddie Lampkin had 2 points in the second half.
Because they weren't getting him the ball enough. They just weren't getting him the ball
So
enough.
you're saying 2 points versus 13 is because he didn't have the ball enough?
Yeah. J.J. Starling, sure. I think J.J. Starling should have got more points in that second half, but he couldn't do it.
He had open looks. I mean, and he was driving, and he's being aggressive. I mean, he was basically 50% from the field, and the offense isn't helping him out. I mean, I don't want to keep coming back to this, but he has no kick-out option with Bell. There's no way that the rest of the team is confident in his ability to shoot the basketball.
Well, they keep giving him the ball.
Yeah, and it was a mistake. I mean, you had the game on the line, and he's the guy. I can't get over that. I really can't. And, I mean, that is just from a basketball viewing perspective. I mean, that is the shot where you have all the time in the world. I mean, Texas Tech didn't even try to close out on that shot. Everyone in the Barclays Center, which was filled with SU fans. I mean, a credit to SU fans. And if there's anyone listening downstate on WAER.org or on the TuneIn app, we'd really love to hear from you. Because, I mean, tonight, you just have an opportunity. You have the fans behind you. Everyone's on their feet in the Barclays Center. SU fans showed up. Chris Bell has the chance to make that place explode, and he doesn't.
We got a text from Ron. Ron, we really appreciate your text. And he's basically saying he's been a Syracuse basketball fan for a long time. He didn't like how this season started, and he's not very positive about thinking about any kind of outcome. He's almost kind of writing this season off in a way. I think it's too early to say that. I think there's too much potential that this team has. They just got to figure a few things out.
Ron, I'm with you. I'm with you, man.
You're done?
The light, it was like a candle. Imagine a candle blowing in the wind.
We're 5 games in.
I don't care.
Oh, my goodness.
Listen, progression can happen. Character and identity does not change.
Donnie Freeman is
so hard
5
to change
games into his
identity of
collegiate
a
career.
team. And I understand that he can get better, but when is it going to happen? Is it going to happen against better teams in the ACC? I mean, you play Tennessee next week. At this rate, if Syracuse plays defense like it did in this tournament against Tennessee, they're going to lose by 30.
I mean, that's what we said they would lose by 30 against Texas.
I didn't say that.
Well, okay.
I think they're going to play a lot of close games this year, but they don't have the ability to close out. They don't. And I think that's a character. I think that is an issue with the team's identity more than it is anything else. I mean, Chris Bell.
You can't get off Chris Bell
is
tonight.
So frustrating to me. I mean, if I'm Adrian Autry, I don't know if I go and play him much against Cornell.
All right. This is going to get into my next topic then. Who is your best role player option then on this team offensively? Then if you're not going to rely on Chris Bell, other role players, who are you going to rely on?
I mean, I think
it ain't a great list. It ain't a great list.
I disagree.
You think it is a great list?
To be honest, I've been really impressed with what Choppa Moore's done in limited minutes this year. I mean, 18 minutes tonight, 8 points, 3 for 5, 1 for 3 from deep. And, I mean, his long game, his three-point shooting was criticized coming in. I mean, so far he's been a pretty decent three-point shooter.
He has. Yeah.
And you know what I love about him that is similar to why I say J.J. Starling is the guy in this offense is that he is aggressive. He plays with a swagger that this team just lacks right now. That's my thing with Donnie Freeman. Donnie Freeman is obviously probably the most talented player physically on this team, but he doesn't play with a swagger right now.
Not yet.
Choppa Moore looks more comfortable playing Division I college basketball in the ACC than Donnie Freeman does. If Donnie Freeman played with the intensity and the conviction that Choppa Moore does, and maybe it's because Choppa's coming off the bench, so he knows he's got to earn his minutes.
Yeah, less pressure on him, yeah.
Right? But if Donnie played with that intensity, I think Syracuse would be 5-0.
Is there a role player that you think is really emerged or should be stepping up for Syracuse to provide them a little bit more of an offensive boost? Call in 315-443-2011. Another player I want to highlight, I like Choppa Moore because I've been really impressed with him too. Jair Davis, he only got 12 minutes, just 2 points tonight. Didn't do a whole lot. His points just came from the free throw line. He's another player I've been really impressed with, super aggressive, can also get those boards. Player I haven't been impressed with, I think you're going to agree with me, Lucas, Jaquan Carlos. I don't think he did a ton for me again tonight. I almost wonder, do you maybe ponder dropping him from the lineup, putting a player like Jair Davis in, adding a little bit more size, make it a ball-dominant offense around J.J. Starling? Because I like that.
I think if J.J. Starling, I think if Jaquan Carlos starts the next game for Syracuse, then that really solidifies my worry about there being a little bit of an identity issue.
Yes, and that solidifies...
Jaquan Carlos does not look fit to play for this team. I mean, he has been the biggest disappointment of the year.
Yeah.
And when I talk about Chris Bell...
wait, hold on a second. Chris Bell is not your biggest disappointment of the year?
No.
Wow.
Because when I talk... And that's why I don't want to, I'm not ragging on Chris Bell.
You sure?
I am. Chris Bell is a great player. He has the ability. let me make it very clear.
Okay.
For everyone listening and for you, AJ. I'm frustrated with Chris Bell is like the guy who comes in like with a full scholarship to Harvard, and like he's getting like B's in class.
But he should be getting
You have
A's.
so much expectation for him. Like Chris Bell could be one of the best shooters in the ACC. I've seen him do it.
Yes, that's what
but
I've been saying.
He is not good under pressure. He is not good handling the moment. Like, and he never has been. I mean, like in that second half of the NC State game, when they start to come back, all of a sudden he can't hit a shot to save his life last year. I mean, tonight, the game on the line. It's not so much about him being guarded. It's not a skill thing. I think it's very mental. Oftentimes, we talked about last year and actually his freshman season with Jim Boeheim in charge, how he didn't really handle criticism well, right? And he would kind of get in his own head. I think getting in his own head and coming from someone who I completely understand his mindset. That's why I was never good at sports, because I get in my own head. If I miss one shot or I make one bad play, I'm thinking about it for the next 10 minutes. And I think Chris Bell's the exact same way, where, I mean, he is a phenomenal shooter.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. But when it comes down to the moment, he just can't make the play.
I just think you're right. I know you're not writing him off, but I think you just let him grow into this season.
He's a junior. He shouldn't have to grow into the season. He has experience. That's a conversation you can have the last 2 years. I don't think you can have that conversation this
I think
year.
you still can. I think it's too early. You have to let him find his footing. He's just going through a slight cold patch.
He's always it's like we could say that almost every game. In the second half tonight, he went through a cold patch.
I'm peering back to last season, and I just remember a reliable Chris Bell from three. And I think you could see that again. But a player I can't see that from is Jaquan Carlos.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We got off the point there. Jaquan Carlos has been a huge disappointment.
Yeah,
he doesn't look like he's fit to start.
And I think
game.
Adrian Autry never changed the lineup other than injury last season. Got to change it. Try something new against Cornell.
Chop more.
Yes, either
Give him a
Chop
chance.
or
What
Jair
has
Davis.
he not earned? I mean, like I read off this stat sheet. You can hear it rustling around if you're listening on 88.3 FM. 8 points tonight. Better than 50% from the field. 1 for 3 from deep.
Yeah.
He only went to the line once.
He
hit
has
one of
earned
his
a
shots.
starting spot. It's clear.
And he played 18 minutes and he had 8 points.
Yeah.
Give him a shot.
Yep. And plus,
because you're going to play some really tough teams. Cornell's another. I mean, Cornell I think is a big game because you now need to make it clear that you're not just going to play up or down to your competition every single time. You need to beat Cornell by like 20 points.
And those fans are going to be on your side. I mean, they're not happy. I don't think this fan base is. I mean, I know you had a few
Syracuse's
positives.
fan base expects excellence.
Yeah, well, they have to lower that expectation.
That's a core issue with the team.
Yeah.
I mean, you shouldn't be lowering that expectation. The fact that you have your best recruit in more than 20 years, and we're talking about lowering expectations in Game 5 of the year. I mean, it's not. That's why I say I'm worried, right? I totally believe in this team's ability.
You're listening to the Double Overtime here on 88.3 WAER. We thank you guys for listening. Having a little debate about who is going to be the reliable guy on the offensive end. We're going to up against a break here soon. Luke, is there one player we haven't mentioned that you think could maybe even elevate their game a little bit more on the offensive end?
No, we've talked about him. It has to be Donnie Freeman.
Okay.
That is it. I mean, because I don't care. 5 games into your freshman year is an excuse for a 4-star.
Mm-hmm.
5 games into your freshman year is not an excuse for a top 20 recruit in the nation. It isn't. I mean, 1 for 7 in a game where you hit maybe 2 more shots, you shoot 50% from the field and you win. It can't happen. You have to take over at some point. I mean, like I said, right now they're projecting him to be taken in the late first round of the NBA draft.
Yeah.
Every draft.
I just think you're right.
So
I think it's too early. You got to let him grow. He's just got here.
And I know he can grow. But
I think he will.
The thing is when you have those expectations, you don't get as much time.
Another person that we always like to hear an opinion from, and he's always
got one.
Always a little bit fiery, is Andrew Selliver. And maybe he'll be especially fiery tonight because he was there with his own eyes. He saw this game play out. We're going to talk to him. Andrew Selliver is coming up right after this break here on the Double Overtime. Don't go anywhere.
Why are there so many songs about rainbows?
This week on Bullseye, we'll talk with songwriter Paul Williams about writing hits for the Carpenters, David Bowie, and Kermit the Frog, and about the time he appeared on Johnny Carson's show dressed as an orangutan.
But I called Doc Severs and I said, Doc, I'm coming in. I'm in full 8 makeup.
That's on the next Bullseye from MaximumFun.org and NPR.
Sunday morning at 11 on WAER.
We know you've got a lot to do in a day, and sometimes it may not be easy to tune in at exactly the right time to catch WAER News. But WAER News is always available, wherever and whenever you are, without a paywall. Visit our website to use our live stream or catch up on local and national news, as well as podcasts on our website at WAER.org.
There is a one-stop listen for everything Syracuse athletics.
You got great talent on this offense. Like, you can't go dormant for an entire quarter. And
The Ostrom Avenue podcast provides unique opinions, plus exciting interviews from industry experts.
joined by Georgia Tech play-by-play broadcaster Andy Demetra, Syracuse.com, football beat reporter Emily Laker.
Check out weekly interviews on YouTube and listen at WAER.org or wherever you get your podcast.
Freeman, right wing three. Off back iron. McMillian hauls it in for the Red Raiders. With pace, Overton drives, kicks far side. Williams, one-hand slam.
It's unfortunate that I knew that three would be a miss as soon as I heard the name Donnie Freeman. He was 0 for 3 from beyond the arc tonight. Welcome back into the double overtime. Syracuse falls 79-74 alongside A.J. Myers, and now our esteemed talk reporter, Andrew Selliver. You might want to ask him a question. We didn't send him to New York for nothing. That was heavy on the budget. 315-443-2011. You can also text AJ, Andrew, and I, 315-556-3929. Andrew, it's a pleasure to have you.
Hello.
We're excited to be alongside you, although I don't expect too much excitement from you about the way that this game panned out tonight.
Oh, sure. Let's get into it, guys.
Oh,
that
yeah.
was another loss for the Orange tonight in
Right.
Brooklyn. As I watch on to this championship game that the Orange could have been playing in, frankly. Could have won last night.
Yeah.
Disappointing trip, I think, for the Orange overall. I think Adrian Autry mentioned it. Honestly, Adrian Autry more fired up last night than he was tonight, because I think he felt like his team had an even better shot to win last night than they did tonight. I'm not so sure that Texas is better than Texas Tech. I think Texas Tech presented a tougher challenge tonight for Syracuse, but they still had a chance. And there are positives. We can get into those, but I don't think that for the program that Syracuse is, yes, they've missed the tournament 3 years in a row, but you can never look at losses in a super positive light.
Andrew, I want to just right off the top, talking about this in-game performance from Syracuse, did Autry mention anything about how the second half just wasn't the same as the first half, especially right from the start, and Texas Tech really extended that lead early on?
Yeah, they talked a little bit about how the shooting was different in the second half, and they just didn't make shots. Back-to-back weeks, or rather back-to-back nights, where Adrian Autry has cited that the shooting wasn't as good as he had hoped, and he said basically that the offense hasn't been at the level that they think it can be all season. But again, he said, we just didn't make shots. We got the shots we wanted, and we missed them. And in the second half, that was more evident, I think, than the first half. The other thing for Syracuse that I thought impacted the game in the biggest way was the turnovers, and this was not a first half versus second half thing. The Orange just turned it over 12 times, and Texas Tech turned it over 3 times. Texas Tech 17-3 assists to turnovers. That's pretty good.
I mean, how could it not? I want to go back to what you said about the shots just not falling, right?
Sure.
I mean, how could it not be? Chris Bell had a chance to make this a 2-point game, and he missed the shot, and it was a terrible-looking shot. I mean, nothing else to be said.
Whoa, I don't know that was a terrible-looking shot.
It basically hit off the front side of the rim. I mean, it could have been a wedgie.
He missed it. It wasn't. I mean, it was straight on line, but he missed it. You're right. I don't know that we can qualify that as a terrible-looking shot. He just missed
in that
one.
moment. Wide open. Well, wait, Andrew. I want to cut you off real quick because we have Eli from Syracuse, and he wants to talk about SU being down from their normal ways historically, which is something we touched a little bit on before the break, and something you kind of touched on, right, about missing the tournament 3 straight years. Eli, what you got for us?
Because we
we have Eli from Syracuse, and he wants to talk about from their normal.
Eli, you there? I think we lost Eli. Well, Eli, if you can get back in touch with us, we'd love to talk about it. And Andrew, we can talk to you about it because it is a conversation to be had,
guys,
right?
you still got me. Yes, you're right.
Yeah, it is a conversation to be had for tonight's game, right? Because Syracuse goes 0 for 2 on this trip and in this tournament, and really 2 games that they should have won, at least one of. And I think tonight really stings. I know you said yesterday maybe a more winnable game, but I think losing both these games is a serious blow.
Yeah, I think tonight maybe stings a little more because it was your second game of the tournament, and now you know you're going 0-2 and going back home. I think last night was the more winnable game, though, and so if you look at them just outside of the focus of we came and played 2 games and this was the second one and now we're 0-2,
right.
I think last night was probably a little more of a tough swallow. But the shooting, let's get back to that. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this as well. I'm not super with the idea that it was we got good shots and just missed them. I do think that they missed some, including the Chris Bell 3 that was just brought up. He can't get much more wide open of a 3, and he just missed it. But I also think that Syracuse was running kind of a slow and without rhythm offense that wasn't a lot of ball movement. There weren't a ton of assists, and they weren't generating, open looks necessarily, at least down low. I thought that was my concern. Sure, the 3s that they took were open, and they didn't make all of those, but I also thought that they could have moved the ball better. They only had 8 assists.
Yeah,
and it feels like it's kind of,
I don't
Jaquan
disagree.
Carlos isn't generating the looks that you hoped he would, so J.J. Starling's running a lot of point. That's a lot of ISO ball, and there isn't a ton of ball movement.
I don't disagree. We have Eli back on the line,
All right.
actually.
How
Eli,
about that?
what you got for us, man?
So here's my main question for everybody with it. And it's more of a general question just with Syracuse athletics as a whole right now. Like, football, basketball, and the whole 9. Where, with the NIL now and, players get paid and all that, and, I support that. But my question for you guys more is just, is Syracuse perhaps not evolving at a rapid enough rate to stay current with just how, college sports in general are? Like, I feel that we might be playing...
Well, Eli, I disagree in terms of the football side of things, and I don't want to get too deep into that because, we're talking about Syracuse's loss to Texas Tech tonight, but, SU brought in one of the biggest transfers on the market in terms of Kyle McCord. That was a big NIL grab. I mean, that was something that wasn't going to happen without increased NIL. And then you bring in Eddie Lampkin in terms of basketball. So I wouldn't say that NIL is necessarily disrupting Syracuse as a tradition, but I would just more say that it's disrupting college sports as a whole. That's a larger conversation, though.
Eli, I think I agree with what you're saying. I think Syracuse was a little late to the whole NIL thing, but you have to look at the players they're bringing in, and Adrian Autry has just begun really his recruiting class. So I think you got to, pump the brakes a little bit in saying that Syracuse isn't with it right now in college athletics, because I think they're there, they're getting in the ballpark.
No, 100%, but it's, how much time do we need to evolve as a top 10 basketball program? You know what I mean? Like, everyone else seems to be right on gear, and we're, if you look at the KenPom rankings, we're like dismal, and that's my concern.
And I
just wanted to hear you guys' comments on that.
And my opinion on that is you just got to give a little bit of time on this season. Yes, they just lost 2 games where they could have won against quad 1 teams, but it's still early in the season. This team hasn't even played an ACC game yet. And I know we're saying, they're going to play awful in ACC play. Just give it some time. Give Donnie Freeman some time. Give Chris Bell some time. Let those guys grow into this season a little bit, and maybe they can right the ship. This season's not over yet.
Andrew, what's your thoughts on this?
On this NIL conversation, all right, I got a couple quick things for you, and then we can talk more about the game tonight. On NIL as a whole at Syracuse, breaking news, Syracuse does not have one of the best fan bases in America.
Yes.
So as a result, I don't think Syracuse is going to be top 25 in NIL funds to dish out to recruits.
Exactly.
I just don't think that's going to happen because if you go to the SEC and you go look at Texas, for example, I can almost guarantee that Texas has way more NIL funds sport to sport to be dishing out to recruits. So I think Syracuse is naturally going to be slightly behind than some of these other programs in that just because they don't have the donors necessarily that some of these big SEC teams do that are willing to give all their money to the sports programs. But I don't think they're terribly behind, and I don't think that is necessarily prohibiting them from being a top 25 basketball team. Like, Syracuse isn't having a terrible time recruiting right now. You can see that.
Right.
Cite Sadiq White and
yes.
and Kyan Anthony, who
Absolutely.
was here last night. Like, I don't think that's necessarily excuse number one right now for Syracuse.
Eli, we thank you so much for your call, man. Have a great rest of your night.
You too. Thank
Syracuse.
you guys. Have a good night.
Certainly, let's get back to the game. The NIL is definitely interesting. I want to talk about Donnie Freeman because, quite frankly, I mean, 13 boards is great, right? And there are times that he looks physically dominant. I almost think 10 boards is what you should expect from him with how big he is and, you know, how physically developed he is for a freshman. But, I mean, 1 for 7 from the field from one of the guys who's supposed to be the guy in this offense to me is majorly disappointing.
Oh, we just got a wedgie here in Brooklyn. By
there we go.
That could have been that Chris Bell three that I was talking about earlier.
That's not true. That's not true.
I want you to go watch it back. I think maybe your angle was deceiving.
No, my angle is straight on that basket. He was shooting it right at me, so I do not think that's the problem. But anyway, sorry to get sidetracked here. What was the question?
That's important.
Again?
Just about Donnie Freeman and the fact that he goes
right.
1 for 7 from the field
That's
tonight.
right.
Like the 13 boards is great, but he didn't score.
I didn't think he was impressive whatsoever.
And is that not a problem to you?
Oh, it certainly is.
Even just 5 games into the season?
Hold on, I'll get there, AJ. One, for the rebounding stuff, the tallest guy on the floor at most times tonight for Texas Tech was 6'9". At most points of the game, Texas Tech was running a 6'9" and a 6'6" forward. So Syracuse had the height advantage at all times. So is it a surprise that Donnie Freeman got those rebounds? No, not particularly. And frankly, the most contested rebounds tonight, I didn't look and say, oh, that's Donnie Freeman that's getting the board. So I think he naturally accumulates those. On the scoring side, I thought he looked terrible. I mean, the 2 travels were really ugly early, and those are things that you would say, okay, it's a freshman, but then you also say, okay, this is a top 15 recruit that is the highest recruit since Melo, and you wouldn't really expect to see that. He doesn't look super comfortable playing out there the last 2 days against this level of competition. And if you told me that was Elijah Moore, I would say, okay, maybe you understand it as a freshman, or Peter Majstorovic, but Donnie Freeman has a different level of aura around him.
Yes, and Andrew, when I teed you up as we were going to break, I talked about how you were fiery and normally had a lot of, crazy out there takes. But in all honesty, I think we're right on the same page. This is what I've been saying all night, and I think AJ may be a little bit. He's not as harsh towards Donnie Freeman. Are you harsh towards Donnie Freeman? Let us know. Call us 315-443-2011. Talk to Andrew and I about it, or you can fight AJ on it. I think everyone should be disappointed.
Hey, Luke, one more thing I want to add on this before we maybe talk about other things as well.
Yeah.
But I do want to jump in here with a note from the press conference.
Yeah.
Because,
absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Because there was a reporter that asked Coach Autry about Donnie Freeman specifically and mentioned specifically the 13 rebounds and was very impressed by the fact that Donnie Freeman had 13 boards tonight. And seemed to think that was very good and wanted Coach Autry's thoughts on that. And Adrian Autry said, basically, Donnie Freeman naturally has rebounding skills. That's not something that he came in needing to work on. And so with his natural talents, those just come for him on a night-in, night-out basis. So he wasn't naturally or necessarily surprised to see that Donnie Freeman had 13 boards tonight. And he said there are a ton of other aspects of the game that he still has to work on. I think we saw a lot of those: defense, shooting, that sort of thing, toughness at this level. And he immediately transitioned the question, instead of talking about Donnie Freeman's boards and all the areas he needed to improve on, to Elijah Moore, and that he was impressed with Elijah Moore's performance tonight as a freshman, because that was kind of phrased in the question of, are you surprised with him being a freshman at what he did tonight? And he instead wanted to talk about being surprised and impressed with Elijah Moore and not Donnie Freeman.
As he should. And I don't know if you heard me say earlier in the show that I think Elijah Moore should start next time. I really do.
Man.
I mean, get Jaquan Carlos out of the lineup and get Choppa Moore in there, because he has earned a spot. He's played good every time he's been on the floor.
He provides great energy.
He's had limited minutes. That is what I love about him. Is he's aggressive. And Andrew, I mean, like I said, I mentioned this earlier in the show, but to me, Donnie Freeman is lacking aggressiveness, and he's lacking the aggressiveness that Chopper Moore displays on every play.
Easy fix for Donnie Freeman. That's why. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off there. I don't think we can really compare a ton between Elijah Moore and Donnie Freeman.
Sure, they're not the same player, but mentality.
I think the two travels were the two plays that stuck out most to me, and you can see like the jump up, put back, and one. Right, it is like, oh my gosh, this guy's got what it takes to play at the next level.
He looks like Kevin Durant.
Right.
When I
but
see
if
his
you watch
arms,
a full 40-minute game tonight, you say, how in the world would NBA scouts that might be in the building think that they should draft this guy in 6 months?
Right. That's the thing to me is like, AJ, you've gone back multiple times to its 5 games, and he's a freshman, but like the standard for him has to be higher, right? Like there's no way that the standard can be let him settle in because the season is not that long.
Because you talk about like
SU won 20 games last year. We're 5 games in. That's a quarter of that.
It's different in basketball too, to me, than it is in football or other sports because you do have one and dones in basketball, and it's not unheard of for these top 15 recruits to come in, play a year, and leave. Right, and I think that's part of the expectation is that they can do that, and I just. Sure, if it was just a 3-star freshman recruit that's coming off the bench, you might say, okay, you give him some time. But I do think there were serious expectations before the season started that at the end of this year, Donnie Freeman wouldn't be back next year, that he would be drafted, and he was a projected first-round draft pick at the beginning of the season. I don't know how you could possibly think that right now based on the way he started the year.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. And look at Trey Johnson, who played last night. I mean, they're really not separated by. They're really not separated.
But he's
in terms of points, though. He put points on the board.
Yeah, at the very end, he was like 4 of 18.
Look at what he's done. Sure, okay. Take away last night. Look at what he extrapolate his performance over the season. Look at what he's done early in the season. Texas hadn't played too many teams early in the year, but even against Ohio State.
Yeah, he went for 29 in his debut against Ohio State. Yeah,
right,
I mean,
a team ranked inside the top 20. And, I mean, they're separated rankings-wise by 247 Sports by less than 10 places.
Yeah.
Right, and last night Texas had the ball in Trey Johnson's hands in a 1 or 2 score game down the stretch to finish it out. Syracuse isn't going to be doing that with Donnie Freeman at the moment.
So, Andrew, is there anything from your time here in Brooklyn? I know you're down on Donnie Freeman. You don't see much there. Is there anything you did see from these 2 games in Brooklyn that you could say, all right, here's a positive this team can take into ACC play, or is it mainly just a negative spin?
No, so a couple things for you on that. 3 big takeaways that we haven't talked about yet. One, the defense was much improved, and the players
in one half, maybe.
No,
I think the whole time.
The whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yes, in the locker room after tonight's game, Chris Bell said, if we play defense against Texas or Texas Tech like we did against Youngstown State, we would have lost these games by 25.
Yes, 100% agree.
I think that the defense was a significant improvement. Red Autry said that in the postgame press conference. He said, I think there is serious momentum that we can build on, and I can build up our team from the way that we played defense. Another thing I was impressed with tonight, it didn't take long for the Orange to turn it around at the free throw line. Syracuse stepped up in a big way. They got there in the second half, and they really impressed me after a night where the big storyline was the free throws cost the Orange against Texas, 24-28 tonight. That's really good. Third and final takeaway for you from things we haven't talked about. Where will the Orange go at the point guard spot? Because this was a big question in the press conference. Adrian Autry said, we're not ready to go away from Jaquan Carlos yet, and the offense isn't solely on Jaquan Carlos. But Jaquan Carlos has not gotten players the ball like we had hoped he would when we brought him in. We didn't bring him in to score. We brought him in to get other players into spots where they score, and he hasn't done that to the level that they're hoping. So that's kind of question number 1 for me going forward is what the Orange do there.
Absolutely. I mean, what has Adrian Autry seen from Jaquan Carlos to say that we're not ready to move on from him? And that goes back to my stubbornness with Coach Autry. Didn't change the lineup at all this season, and if he's not going to make any tinkers to this starting 5, then is he really coaching?
Yes, he's the head basketball coach. But yes, I think he is coaching because Jaquan Carlos's minutes continue to go down and down.
Yeah.
I don't think you can abandon him and say we're going to play you 5 minutes now, right? Like I do think Jaquan Carlos is slowly getting better, but I do think at the moment you will continue to see your guy, AJ, Elijah Moore, or is it Luke's guy?
It's more Luke.
It's
more
it's
Luke.
my guy.
Okay.
I'm big on Jair Davis.
Yeah, he didn't play a ton.
No, he
which
didn't.
was
Yeah.
It was more Peter Majstorovic,
Yeah.
actually. But Elijah Moore, I think, will continue to go up in minutes based on what we saw tonight.
You're running out of time to ask Andrew a question. We've only got about 34 minutes left on the air. Call in 315-443-2011. Shoot us a text, 315-556-3929. Ask Andrew about the atmosphere there at the Barclays Center. It was 2 nights with a bunch of Orange fans in the seats.
Certainly
They were on their feet late
They
in the
saw 2
game.
losses.
And they were disappointed twice. SU was the local team here. I mean, maybe you can make an argument about St. Joe's coming up from Philly, but I mean, this game was in New York. Syracuse
there are not a ton of people here right now to watch.
Syracuse
this
is
championship.
New York's basketball team, right?
St. John's.
St. John's. Well,
That's
New York
serious.
City. I'm talking about New York State as a whole.
It's about to be St. John's.
It has been Syracuse forever, is my point. And,
Yeah.
I mean, the fan support is clearly still there. I mean, the second half tonight, that's kind of the last thing I want to touch on while we have time with you here. I mean, why this team seems to be able to figure things out and break things down in a bad way so quickly. I mean, like the free throw shooting can go from 50% to 86% like it was tonight. And the defense can go from giving up 29 points and 31 points in 2 halves to giving up almost 50. I mean, that is largely concerning to me because that tells me that the team doesn't have an identity.
Well, hold on that a little bit. I mean, they didn't almost give up 50 in the half until they gave up like 10 on free throws in the last minute. So
Sure.
I don't think that's necessarily.
You still give up, 42? 42 is not an impressive half. I mean, in my opinion, I think you should be giving up less than that. I mean, clearly the defense is capable of it.
In the last minute, you gave up 10 points, and that's basically all on free throws. Like, that's at least 8 points that you probably don't give up if you're down, so you gave up 40 after giving up 31. I didn't think the defense in the second half was necessarily the big problem. They did give up a couple big offensive rebounds that led to second chance points at big times as well. But I did think the biggest problem, like Syracuse found themselves coming from behind in both of these games. Yesterday it was because they started poorly and they were always chasing the game. Today it felt like middle of that second half there was a spot where J.J. Starling and Eddie Lampkin were both on the bench, and the Orange went cold offensively, and I just don't think they have a ton of scoring options that really want to run the basketball offense right now outside of those two.
8 to 8 in second chance points in the second half, by the way, tonight. Real quick, I do want to ask you about Cornell, right? Because this was a conversation we briefly had earlier. In my eyes, Syracuse has to blow out Cornell by like 15 to 20 points.
Yeah, I got a couple thoughts for you on where things are headed here in the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Not just with Cornell, because I do, not that I want to sound the alarms
Well,
necessarily.
Notre Dame is right around the corner, too. That game is on December 7th.
Hold
That's
on,
the
we're
ACC
gonna
opener.
get to the Fighting Irish with what I've got coming for you.
All right.
Not that I want to necessarily sound the alarms on Syracuse as a team, but I do want to start sounding the alarms on the ACC as a conference. Because, yes, Syracuse desperately needs a win against Cornell when you look at what's coming up for the Orange. But the ACC, over the last couple of years, the conversation has been, well, this conference is failing to get teams in. How do they do better? And the answer has been they need to perform better in the non-conference. And if you look with Feast Week coming up, you've got some of these pre-Thanksgiving week tournaments starting. The last 2 days, as we start these big non-conference games, Power 5 against Power 5, the ACC is getting waxed.
Yep.
Tennessee beat Virginia by 22 yesterday. Miami lost to Drake by double digits. Syracuse lost to Texas by 4. Moving on to today. Elon beats Notre Dame. SMU's about to lose to Mississippi State. St. John's beat Virginia by 25. Oklahoma State beat Miami. and Pittsburgh with the only big win over LSU by 11.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if the ACC wants to get teams in, you can't do that. Like I'm afraid for the ACC that this upcoming ACC-SEC challenge is going to be a disgrace. Like, I think that's where there are serious concerns, and that obviously impacts Syracuse. And don't get me started about Syracuse's ACC-SEC matchup, because they got to play at Tennessee, who might just be the best team in the country.
Yeah, that game seems like it's going nowhere but really ugly to me.
Yeah, we're talking about
I
a
really
Tennessee
don't feel
team
good about that.
That beat, we talked Tennessee beat Virginia by 22 yesterday. They're up 47-20 on Baylor at halftime.
Yeah.
47-20.
Yeah, they are a phenomenal team. That has become a really good program.
Yeah, so that's why when we talk about Syracuse specifically, you need to beat Cornell, and you probably need to beat Georgetown after it, because my thoughts were coming into the night that Syracuse had a 10% chance of winning in Knoxville. I think it might be down to 5 right now, looking at this Tennessee-Baylor score.
Andrew, before we let you go into the New York City night, maybe, I'm trying to be optimistic here. Is there any optimism for these Syracuse fans, for listeners, that, maybe this team could make a push to a tournament? I know you kind of written off the tournament a little bit. Is there any optimism from your time here in Brooklyn?
Well, I wouldn't say I've written off the tournament, because I do think that Syracuse proved they competed. Well, like, Syracuse was not that far away from going 2-0 here. So
yeah.
So they played two teams that I would expect you'll see in March, and they had chances to win. But we've talked about how big these non-conference Power 5 matchups are, and you don't get a ton of them. And so that's where I think the concern comes in, is you just lost 2 of your big non-conference games that you could have won. So you're going to have to win some of these close games in the Power 5 down the road. But I mean, if you talk to some Syracuse people ahead of Texas yesterday, I think some people would have told you they thought they were going to lose by 30, right?
I agree. That was a narrative,
Like Syracuse is 3-2, and you can make the argument that their 2 losses are the 2 best games they've played.
They lost by a combined 9 points. I mean, that should tell you something.
and they beat Youngstown State, Colgate, and Lehigh by what?
15 total. Yeah. I mean, that's crazy.
I do think, obviously, after losses, you're going to be negative, because wins are wins and losses are losses, and that's how sports work. But I'm not so sure that the Orange didn't just play their best 2 games of the season here in Brooklyn.
No, I don't disagree. Andrew, we thank you for your time, man. Let us know if you can enjoy another latte tomorrow alongside Ian Nicholas.
I don't drink coffee, so I won't be doing that, but we'll need plenty of coffee. 5 a.m. road trip back to Syracuse tomorrow morning. Football tomorrow on WAER.
Yeah, it's Sam Reese mentioned it at the end of Orange Overtime. This is crossover season,
baby. Best
time of the year. 3 days,
Let's
3
do
straight
it.
games. Andrew, thanks so much, man. Safe travels back in the early morning tomorrow.
Love it.
When
Thanks,
we come
guys.
back here on the Double Overtime, we're talking about a little bit of the New York Stock Exchange. We're bringing our Big Apple energy upstate. Stick with us. You don't want to miss it. Syracuse falls 79-74 tonight, but we roll on until 11 o'clock on the Double Overtime.
Delve into the rich tapestry of acoustic-led folk, roots, and Americana music as we welcome back Common Threads here on 88.3 FM WAER. Enjoy national and international acts as well as local artists every Sunday with host Pete Thomas. Whether you're seeking the comfort of timeless classics or contemporary gems and music discovery, don't miss Common Threads Sundays from 2 to 5 exclusively on 88.3 WAER, your local NPR station.
On the next Putumayo World Music Hour,
we'll be serenaded by some of the world's finest balladeers. I'm Dan Storper.
And I'm Rosalie Howarth. Pack your bags and join us for World Troubadours, the next Putumayo World Music Hour.
Sunday night at 11 on WAER.
Hong Kong newspaper publisher Jimmy Lai went on trial this week for his role in anti-government protests 5 years ago. His son Sebastian Lai says his father has always stood up for freedom.
My father had a very good line, and he said, Hong Kong is so poor, the only thing they have is money.
That conversation Saturday on Weekend Edition from NPR News.
Saturday morning from 8 to 10 on WAER.
Carlos inbound feed to Lampkin, gets it right back, front court left. Dribbles with his left, stops, shoots a long two, misses, but a putback and one. Donnie Freeman, the freshman phenom.
Freshman phenom. That's what Tyler Aiken had to say during the call in Syracuse's
We'll be the judge of that.
79-74 loss to Texas Tech. If you want to get involved in this show, we want to hear you on the air. Call in 315-443-2011, or you can text 315-556-3929.
You're running out of time.
Luke, have you ever been to New York City?
I have, yes. It's a great city. I've been there twice.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever been to the stock exchange area? Have you seen the bull?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I have a picture
I.
with the bull.
Wow. See, I tried to get a picture with the bull, but the line was too long.
It should have been, if we get avatars on our YouTube streaming, that should have been mine for this game, or for this this show in general.
So you mentioned game. We're going to play a little New York Stock Exchange. Are we up or are we down on certain things? And I figured it's probably fitting to start with Donnie Freeman because I think we're going to be on different trajectories here. I'm still up on Donnie Freeman. I think that stock is still up. I don't think it's crashed yet. It's way too early for it to crash. It's way too early to sell on Donnie Freeman, who's a 5-star recruit and has played just 5 games.
We're not talking about buying or selling, though, because right now would be the time to buy. We're setting the market.
You're setting the market.
We're saying where is the market right now?
Okay.
The market is down. Donnie Freeman is down. He just went 1 for 7 in a winnable game. I mean, listen, we talked about it with Andrew. It can't happen. It just can't. Not from your 5-star. You said it. I mean, you said it. Give him time to adjust. I don't care. He doesn't deserve time to adjust. I mean, he's supposed to be. When you're a 5-star recruit,
a lot of pressure on you. A lot of pressure on you. He's only, how old is he, 19 or 20?
Why do you get that moniker?
Because you're really good at basketball. Or
right,
really good
because
at the sport.
You can handle the college level, arguably handle the NBA level at that time when you enter. And listen, maybe Donnie Freeman is truly a 4-star player. And if he is, then fine. Give him some time to settle in. That's fine. I'm okay with that. But a 5-star player, well, he's not playing one right now. Simple as that. And Adrian Autry clearly agrees. Adrian Autry knows a lot more about basketball than everyone in this room.
Yeah.
And the entirety of our WAER Sports Talk Desk and our production crew off to the left. Adrian Autry is a knowledgeable guy.
I think it is interesting to see how he just kind of didn't even answer the question. I mean, the question wasn't around his offensive game. Well, no. The question was not around his offensive game. The question was around his rebounding, which he's done really well.
Yeah, and he brushed it off and said it's a natural thing that he expects.
Yeah,
and I don't disagree.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
He's got arms the length of the Hudson River.
Rebounding should not be a problem for him, and it isn't. That's a good thing. It's not a problem for him.
Great. It is a good thing, but it's worrying where it's at right now in terms of scoring.
I'm not worried yet. It's too early for me to say this guy is written off. He's having an awful season. You're just 5 games into the year.
What about J.J. Starling?
J.J. Starling's stock's way up. I think he's been great.
I agree.
Yeah, I know I had a little rebuttal with him in the whole who's the number 1 offensive guy, but J.J. Starling as a whole, great. Was really disappointed in his second half performance because I think he could have done more, but I really like him, and I think maybe that long sleeve look should be a trend the rest of the year.
I love your obsession with the long sleeves, especially because it was it was before. You know, it's like, and I referenced it downstairs as we were planning out our show tonight. Well, Sam Reese was taking us through countdown to tip-off. You know, you were talking about other iconic sports looks.
Yeah.
Long sleeve JJ might be an iconic
I kind of
look.
Fascinate around equipment and jerseys and stuff.
Talk about
in sports.
masked LeBron. Talk about flu
points.
game Jordan.
Yeah.
Long sleeve JJ.
And in that first half, JJ Starling, I was like, this is his iconic game. He's going to go for 40 tonight. But then he stalled off in the second.
Well, the next time we get to talk to JJ Starling, anyone on our fantastic WAER sports staff, I would request that someone asks him, what's with the long sleeves?
Do you think he was
be
cold in the first game against Texas?
Maybe, the JMA Dome, it does get hot despite the air conditioning.
Well, he was in Brooklyn tonight.
Okay. This is my point. You have to let me build it up.
Sorry.
The JMA Dome does get hot sometimes just because of the structure of it being a dome and everything. It's hard to keep a place like that cool. They did actually upgrade the air conditioning along with the seat renovation over the offseason. something I learned when I went to the press conference where they talked about all the improvements they made. They talked about the air conditioning for a long time.
It's not the carrier.
Tell me about, or tell us about J.J. Starling, what your thoughts on him. 315-443-2011. Text us, 315-556-3929. There's a plethora of ways to interact with us on social media as well, at WAER Sports Talk, wherever you can find us. Right. J.J. Starling had the sleeve look. He's the leader of this offense. He's great. So maybe he was warm in the JMA Dome. He kind of liked the sweat he was building up, and then he got to Barclays Center, and he's like, wow, it's not so hot in here. I need some sleeves to keep that sweat going.
Maybe.
Keep the adrenaline pumping.
And he
looked good.
Yeah.
Both
and
these games, right? I was really pleased with it.
Yeah, and something to even raise his stock even more, I think I'd look at head coach Adrian Autry, is put the ball in his hands more.
Yeah.
And that involves getting the ball out of Jaquan Carlos at the start of possessions.
Which they tried,
yes.
by the way. And that is, I hate to say it because we just said his stock's way up, but when they tried it, that was when the offense looked its worst.
Possibly,
But
yes.
I do think that giving him the ball at the point and just letting him work is a good way for this offense to operate.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you have to rely on J.J. Starling more, along with Eddie Lampkin, to be that number one offensive player. Don't have too much time left here on the double overtime, so if you want to get your thoughts in, call in right away. What players, stockers are up? You could call in. Luke just said the number, 315-443-2011. Luke, I mean, I don't even need to ask this question, but Chris Bell, I know his stock's way down for you.
Yeah, right. I mean, Chris Bell's stock is in the basement, to be honest with you, but this is a situation where I would buy. Because I know...
What?
Yeah, you don't understand the point that I've been making about Chris Bell. And
All
the thing
I've heard from you from Chris Bell is he's not clutch.
When
he
we
can't
had
shoot
Andrew on
threes
the show,
contested.
AJ, I felt understood. Because Andrew understands how
He
I
didn't
feel.
understand your thing about his shot being way off at the end of the game.
Well, that's just objectively wrong. And I would respectfully ask Andrew to go back. You know, he said Chris Bell was shooting the ball at him, right? Meaning the ball was coming towards him when
Yes,
Bell
that
shot
isn't a
it.
great look.
I talked about a wedgie on the front side of the rim.
Yeah.
He would have a much better view of that if Chris Bell was shooting the ball away from him. So
Yeah.
that immediately discredits Andrew's opinion there. And I would recommend that he goes back and watches the tape. That was a terrible shot. In a moment where, I mean...
He was
worst
wide
it should-
open!
Exactly, and he's your number one three-point shooter. Worst it should have been is swirling around the rim and comes out.
Okay, so
anyway,
you still
my
want him
point
to
is-
take the shot. Okay.
Yes, I want Chris Bell to take the shot, and
Yeah.
that's been my point the whole night, is that he is a fantastic shooter.
Mhm.
He has that ability.
Yeah,
he's got to figure
he's
out
in a
the
little
mental
cold slump
stuff,
right now.
because the
He'll
mental
get out of
stuff
it.
is killing him.
It's just been a bad week for him on the market. It's just been a bad
yes,
week.
exactly.
Bad week on the market.
Bad
Next
week.
week he could be green. He could be all green.
Yeah, I mean,
he could have 50 points
We've
against
seen
Cornell.
him go down and score,
He could be-
7 straight three-pointers?
Yeah, he could be 12
That's
of 4.
happened,
He could be
like,
12
in the
of
last
14 from 3 on Wednesday against Cornell.
100%. And that's why I say buy stock in Chris Bell. But he's like, I mean, you know, he's not like S&P 500 stock, like Apple or
Mhm.
Amazon.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know, it's always going to go up. Like,
Yeah.
he's like, you're buying stock in Spirit Airlines. Like, it might have a
Don't buy
great-
stock in Spirit
or
Airlines
it's like
right now.
GameStop, right? Like,
Yeah.
it might soar at one
Okay,
point,
but
and then
here's
the next
my-
point, it's in the basement.
Here's my issue I have with you and Chris Bell is when he has bad games, I think you're going to be like, oh, it was Chris Bell's fault. But when he has a good game, are you going to give him his flowers?
Of course. Yes, I'm
Okay.
going to give him his flowers.
Okay.
AJ, that's a stupid question.
It just feels as though you've
Am I
been
gonna give him his
excessively
flowers
harsh
when-
on Chris Bell tonight.
Because he lost the game.
All right.
He hits that three, give the ball to JJ, and then Syracuse probably wins.
I mean, they're still down by 2.
I trust them in a tie game. I do. Late in a game. I know
Really?
they
You
haven't-
trust this team in a tied game?
Yeah, I do. I don't trust them when there's time left on the clock. But I mean, look at the way that they played in the second overtime against Youngstown State. I understand that's
That was-
Youngstown
yeah.
State, but JJ can take over a game. I think you can rely on him to get you a
Yes,
bucket when
I
you
agree
need it
with you.
pretty much
Yeah.
any time. But you have to set that up. The defense has obviously been an issue. There's obviously been a lot that goes into those moments, getting to those moments. Chris Bell is not supposed to be the guy when it's time to hit a shot. He's supposed to be the guy that gets you there. And he failed tonight. But if that's a 2-point game, you give the ball to JJ. I mean, I know what Andrew said is really valid, and it wasn't something I was bringing up early, but, you know, Texas Tech got a lot of their late points off free throws.
Yeah.
That is true.
Mhm.
And, I mean, I didn't think that – I think this is a huge defensive step forward, this tournament. There was still improvement. I'm disappointed, but there was
That
still
goes
improvement.
to my next thing is what's your stock range on the defense? Is it green or red? Where are you at?
You know, like
I'm still in
this
the
is
red.
one we maybe need to bring Ian, Andrew, Tyler, the rest of the crew. We've even got our own Skylar Wilkes down there reporting for some of our friends, and we might need to get their stock expertise that they may have picked up from the air in New York and ask them, because it's hard to say what's the stock with this defense. If they go out against Cornell and blow them out, then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, well, the defense was an issue, and they fixed it pretty dang quick.
Yeah, and I think what Chris Bell said tonight is extremely valid. He said if they played defense the way they played against Youngstown State, neither of these games would have been close.
Yes,
so
it was an issue that got better. But if they go right back to regressing and they go to like overtime against Cornell, then I'm saying the defense once again basement.
I think
and lock it down there with a padlock.
I think the basement, the defense, it was like.
Because that shows me once again, and I don't mean to like rehash this argument because I don't think it's a big issue, but if the defense becomes an issue again against mid-major teams like Cornell, an Ivy League team, then all of a sudden, then I'm questioning this team's culture and the identity.
Yeah.
I really do think, I don't think it's a big issue, but I think the identity is lacking. Like, I think Adrian Autry has been a great coach. I'm really happy with the work he's done through the first few years, especially with recruiting.
Yeah, it's only 2 years in.
Yeah, exactly. It's early in the process, but if the defense is an issue, and this is a team that plays to its competition every time, then I have serious questions about the intensity that these guys bring on the floor night in and night out. Because at this point, I mean, if it is not in your team's head that you got to play hard against these mid-major teams, I mean, what's it going to take? You went to double overtime against a team projected 6th in the Horizon League.
That's a problem. And I think identity and culture, I mean, not culture, but identity was a question we were asking about last year, too.
Yeah.
A lot about last year. And it was always a reliance.
Well, that was with Benny Williams and everything else.
Yeah, and there was always a reliance on Judah Mintz, which I think they've strayed away from this season. We just haven't seen it consistently yet. What about the team as a whole, Luke? Where's the stock of the team as a whole?
I want to say the stock's up. Overall,
after
for the season,
these 2 games,
because I mean, like, it goes back to what Bell said, right? I mean, if they play defense like they did in the first 3 games, then they get absolutely mollywopped. They didn't tonight, and I think that's a large part of why. So yeah, the stock's up, but you know, it's one of those things where I can't be like too mad about it, but at the same time, just leaves such a sour taste in your mouth because these were winnable games. And if they win these games, then I mean, I'm pretty sure they're gonna make the tournament. If you win both these games, like
I mean, you still got all of ACC play.
Yeah, but teams that set themselves up, AJ, like college sports in general, people are not good at having this discussion. Like teams that set themselves up well early in the season generally don't fall off in college sports.
Yeah,
you know, if they win these games, I'm pretty confident that they're going to make a run this year.
Yeah, and I think
it's like, and it was right there.
Yeah,
but it doesn't happen.
And it's almost something that we look at the football team. You know, if they beat Stanford early on in the season, you know, that game would have been
100%.
Would have been different against Pitt.
The football team's good.
Yeah,
but
and who knows? We could be in close to March looking at ACC play and saying like, "Oh my goodness!"
If you don't lose that Texas Tech game, you don't
lose that
lose that
one opportunities that Syracuse just
they
squandered.
Yes.
Definitely a lot to be left unanswered. Maybe. We're almost done. We just got a little bit over 10 minutes. When we come back, me and Luke are going to give our final words, our final thoughts on tonight's loss. Stick around, the double overtime. Almost done, but we got a few more minutes left.
On last week's Wait, Wait, we asked Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer if she was the only sitting governor to have a rap song written about her.
That wouldn't surprise me. Have you met them? I'm going to get in trouble now.
On Peter Sagal, we'll try to get the stars of Somebody Somewhere, Bridget Everett and Jeff Hiller, to get themselves in hot water. That's on our intentionally provocative news quiz from NPR.
Saturday morning at 11 on 88.3 FM WAER.
Why are there so many songs about rainbows?
This week on Bullseye, we'll talk with songwriter Paul Williams about writing hits for the Carpenters, David Bowie, and Kermit the Frog, and about the time he appeared on Johnny Carson's show dressed as an orangutan.
But I called Doc Severinsen and I said, Doc, I'm coming in. I'm in full 8 makeup.
That's on the next Bullseye from MaximumFun.org and NPR.
Sunday morning at 11 on WAER.
Delve into the rich tapestry of acoustic-led folk, roots, and Americana music as we welcome back Common Threads here on 88.3 FM WAER. Enjoy national and international acts as well as local artists every Sunday with host Pete Thomas. Whether you're seeking the comfort of timeless classics or contemporary gems and music discovery, don't miss Common Threads Sundays from 2 to 5 exclusively on 88.3 WAER, your local NPR station.
Williams Guarded by Starling, backing down, dribbles with the left hand, stops, pops, misses off the glass. Offensive rebound, Toppin misses it. Offensive rebound, Williams, and he gets the putback.
Syracuse falls tonight 79-74 at Barclays Center. It's actually not the last time that they'll play at Barclays Center.
No.
They go back on December 21st
Syracuse,
against Maryland.
The university of a whole loves New York City, so that's kind of why the team is always putting themselves there.
They played in the early season tournament there 2 years ago.
Yep.
St. John's.
Yeah.
And my memory's not that good.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Not on the spot.
And of course, the football team has been there for the Bad Boy Mowers Bowl.
Yeah,
too many
Minnesota,
times.
A classic.
We're going to talk football at the end of the show,
Yeah.
but I swear if that football team is back at Yankee Stadium again, I am not going to be a happy camper.
I mean, they've played there 2 times in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Might play there again this year.
No,
I actually saw a projection.
that's why I'm scared. That's why I'm scared. I'm like, no.
All
No
right.
more Yankee Stadium.
We still got some basketball to talk about before we wrap up here. Our final words. And unfortunately, mine is not positive.
I'm not surprised.
I hate this narrative that I'm so negative. I think I'm just realistic. And that's where I want to go with this, right? Because I believe that it might not be by much, but SU will regress this year in terms of record. I don't want to say that. I want to say, because there's so much potential with this team, I want to say that they're there, but they were 20-12 last year, AJ. That's not a bad season. I mean, they were on the bubble at the end of the year. They weren't like first 4 out or anything, but like there were times where there was a conversation about like potentially making the tournament. They had some good ACC wins. They went and beat a good Pitt team,
and then they crashed out in the ACC tournament. That rid them off.
Right.
But I see what you're saying.
Yes, like if they well, of course they crashed out to NC State, who was the Final Four.
Yeah.
But that's a different conversation entirely. I think they're an 18-19 win team. I do, but that's still a regression. And honestly, Adrian Autry set the bar pretty high with his first season because he's basically coming in with Jim Boeheim's scraps. Now, not to say that was bad players. There's a lot of good players on those teams.
But it wasn't his squad.
It wasn't his squad. It wasn't really his system because he had to do it in limited time. He had to kind of put together what he could with what he had, and they won 20 games.
But now this is his squad.
Right. Donnie Freeman, Choppa Moore, a bunch of other guys. Eddie Lampkin. Peter Majstorovic played actually kind of a lot tonight.
Too much, I think. But
11 minutes. It seemed like more.
Yeah. Get more Jair Davis.
He had 2 points. 1 for 3 from the floor. But, yeah, he's got his guys, and I think this is an undisciplined team. If this was a football team, I think they would struggle with flags because there's too many silly mistakes, and it cost them tonight. You have to be able to hit clutch shots. You have to have one guy on your team who can hit a clutch shot late. 2 nights ago, Chris Bell was terrible from the line. Tonight, he missed his 3-pointer that could have won it for them. That's cost them. That's the identity of this team right now. You can fix some things, but it's hard to make that shift. And so that's why, I say for my final word, SU 18-19 win team this year.
My final word, I'm going to keep it to the name of the segment. Just one word, calm. All of Syracuse fans, if you're listening, take a deep breath. You're just 5 games.
Therapist.
You're just 5 games into the season. You almost beat Texas if you knock down your free throws, which I understand. That's a problem. You can't blame free throws for why you didn't win. You got to knock those down.
We talked about that.
And then tonight against Texas Tech, we've alluded to it. If Chris Bell hits a 3, you're maybe in this game. You maybe win this game. You almost had 2 quad 1 wins. You'll have other opportunities this season. You'll have opportunities at home this season to get those types of quad 1 wins. Donnie Freeman's got to turn it around. He will turn it around. I have too much confidence in Donnie Freeman. I think J.J. Starling's, I think we've seen glimpses of him having a stellar season. And I also think the guys they've brought in have looked pretty good outside of Jaquan Carlos. Unfortunately, hasn't really worked out for him. But it's still early for him, too. He needs to remain calm. Maybe he can grow into this team. I just look at these players. I look at this squad that Adrian Autry's assembled. You just need calm. I know it hasn't been a great start to the season. I know they barely beat the winnable games, and they could have got 2 wins in Brooklyn these last 2 days. They just couldn't get it done. They were close. You're not even at the new year yet. Calm. This season can turn around. This can be a successful season for Syracuse, and this team can absolutely make the tournament.
I hope you're right. I really do.
There's some optimism.
A team trying to make a better bowl game. The playoff, or the tournament, as you can now call it, I guess. And there is a tournament in college football now.
It is fully.
Yeah, that's probably out of the conversation. Well, I would say definitely. I think probably has actually exited and locked the door at this point. But Syracuse football is fighting for a better bowl game, and
Pop-Tart Bowl.
It can move itself forward a little bit. That's actually not a bad game.
I have been on this hill for a long time. If you listen to the Ostrom Avenue podcast, which I highly recommend you do, I've said I would love for this team to go to the Pop-Tart Bowl just because I want to see Syracuse. I think they eat Pop-Tarts if they win, but there's also a giant Pop-Tart.
There's a giant Pop-Tart that comes out of the
Yeah,
coaster.
I just think that would just be
By the way,
awesome.
real quick, breaking news on the double overtime. Boots on the ground, one of our members of the WAER Sports Desk, Dan Papillo, has reported that it was extremely cold at the Barclays Center the last 2 nights. So I think we finally have the reason for JJ Starling's sleeves.
Wow.
I wonder why no one else did it.
I guess he was really cold.
Maybe they should have, yeah. You know when you get a cold sweat, like you hit like a good workout or maybe a good basketball run or something, and then afterwards it's like you're in the heat, but you're cold.
Yeah.
Because maybe that was how JJ was feeling.
Maybe.
And then he was like, oh,
It worked in the first half. Second half, not so much.
Syracuse has got to play UConn tomorrow for football.
Yes.
I think the Orange have a good chance of winning. Loved what they showed against Cal.
Absolutely,
That's the team that is the team that this team needs to be.
I mean, UConn's good. They're a good team, but Syracuse is many steps above them. They should blow them out. This should be a simple victory for the Orange.
2 7-3 teams. One of them has played pretty much nobody.
Yep.
And the other one has played some decent teams.
Yeah.
And, outside of like a disaster.
Better not be a
Pitt.
slow start. It better not be a Holy Cross, Virginia Tech kind of game.
I
Because if
think-
it is, they're in trouble. Start out fast, get in the end zone early, blow them out.
I'll give you one prediction before we go here.
Yeah.
We're running out of time on the double overtime. LaQuint Allen, 75 yards rushing in the first half tomorrow. Run
There
the
you
ball.
go.
Run over this team.
Yeah.
You're bigger than them. No reason not to. Our next broadcast, Syracuse, well, for basketball, that is. I know we just talked about football. Syracuse men's basketball plays Cornell on Wednesday, November 27th, a Thanksgiving Eve classic.
There you go.
Brewing. SU's got a lot to prove. Tip-off is at 7 o'clock. Countdown to tip-off is at 6:30. The double overtime goes until 11 o'clock with Tyler Aiken and Austin Barrick. Tomorrow, though, we've got a football broadcast. That's Syracuse, who plays UConn at noon. Countdown to kickoff at 11:30. The double overtime goes until 5 p.m. with Jonah Weintraub and our wonderful engineer, Alex Ramol, who's sitting to my left. Got some thank yous to hand out real quick to our producer, Jordan Leonard, our engineer, aforementioned Alex Ramol, our reporter, Andrew Sullivan, doing great work downstate in Brooklyn, and the WAER Sports Talk Desk, Griffin Bloomstein, Drew Albaugh, and Evan Edmiston. All 3 of you guys putting in great work tonight. Syracuse falls 79-74, 0-2 in the Legends Classic in Brooklyn. Barclays Center, not so nice to them. AJ, I think they got a win against Maryland when they go back there next. That's all we got for now. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great night. From the double overtime, Luke Burgess and AJ Myers saying so long.